Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a high-stakes intersection that is literally keeping technology leaders up at night, the collision of artificial intelligence and governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC. We're going to look at exactly why this rapid AI adoption exposes some really fundamental weaknesses in how organizations govern technology, and, more importantly, how we actually fix it. So let me ask you, do you have GRC covered? Most organizations think they do. I mean, they've got the thick policy documents, the risk registers, the control matrices, and those beautifully color-coded audit calendars, right? On paper, it looks highly structured and completely defensible. It gives us this very comforting illusion of safety. Okay, let's dive into this because here is the hard truth that totally shatters that illusion. As our source material points out, a documented control is not always an operating control. You know, frameworks like NIST or SOC 2, they're absolutely essential. They give us the structure and a common language. But frameworks themselves, they don't actually execute controls. They aren't going to stop an unapproved deployment, and they definitely don't capture evidence for you. To see how this really plays out in the real world, let's look at a totally relatable case study. Just imagine a mid-sized SaaS company. They provide a customer support platform used by healthcare and financial clients. They've got their SOC 2 controls, formal change management policies, and control owners assigned in their software. Leadership looks at all this and thinks, yep, we are fully covered. But then, the product team decides, hey, let's integrate AI into the platform to summarize customer tickets. And here is how fast things go off the rails. In month 1, it's just a small, well-intentioned internal experiment by a product manager. Fast forward to month 2, data science builds a prototype and engineering connects it to a staging environment. Month 3, support leaders test it and they absolutely love the efficiency. Everyone just thinks they're innovating. But then we hit month 4. An enterprise customer asks for assurance, and boom, the audit fire drill begins. Suddenly, GRC is brought in, and the questions start firing off rapidly. Was this use case formally approved before development? Was customer data reviewed before being used in the prototype? Were the model's limitations actually documented? What about human oversight? Were validation results retained anywhere? Who owns the post-deployment monitoring? When the company scrambles to find these answers across a dozen scattered emails and Slack messages, that illusion of coverage, it completely breaks down. This chaos right here is what we call the execution gap. It's essentially that space between what your documented framework requires and the actual day-to-day process your people follow on the ground. Now, for years, companies have managed this gap through sheer manual effort and last-minute scrabbling. But AI changes so quickly and it touches so many different teams that it makes this execution gap glaringly obvious. Which brings us to a really critical distinction. Administrative GRC is the paper reality. It tells you what the organization intended to do. It's that policy sitting quietly on a shared drive. Operational GRC, on the other hand, shows you what actually happened in reality. Listen, for control to be real, it has to have a place to operate inside the actual living workflow of the business. So why do these controls fail to operate? Well, it usually comes down to fragmented ownership. When AI is introduced, product owns the business case. Data science owns the model. Engineering owns deployment. Then security, privacy, compliance, and audit all have a hand in it. It's a huge list. Everyone is involved, making it kind of feel like governance is covered. But here is the massive danger. Involvement is not the same as accountability. When governance belongs to everyone, it essentially belongs to no one. Without a single accountable owner for a control, failures happen really quietly. Evidence just disappears into the ether. Exceptions stay open indefinitely, and monitoring is just assumed to be happening by someone else, right up until an incident or an audit forces the issue. Fixing the execution gap. Let's move to and see how this builds into an actual solution. How do we turn that SaaS company's breakdown into a streamlined process? Well, it comes down to a really actionable 5-step playbook. We have to move from reactive documentation to proactive workflows, AI intake, clear ownership, unified approvals, building evidence, and ongoing monitoring. Let's look at steps 1 and 2. This is all about minimum viable intake and clear accountability. You have to trigger governance early. I mean, before a single line of code is written or a vendor tool is turned on, there must be a structured intake process. Who is the business owner? What data is involved? What's the intended use? By capturing this up front, you assign an exact owner to the lifecycle immediately, which stops those rogue AI experiments dead in their tracks. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how step 3 hinges on one absolutely crucial concept: unity. You have got to move approvals out of scattered emails, meeting notes, and separate tickets, and force them into one single unified workflow record. Whether you're using Jira, ServiceNow, or whatever tool, the deployment absolutely cannot proceed unless the data usage, security review, and model validation are all approved in that single, traceable system of record. And that leads directly to step 4, which solves everyone's favorite corporate pastime, the dreaded audit fire drill. Weak evidence means your team is running around frantically saying, let's go find the evidence, taking screenshots and digging through old chat logs. Strong evidence that flips the script entirely. Because you used a unified workflow, routine work naturally produces routine proof. The evidence is just already there. Step 5, the AI governance lifecycle. This right here is the most critical mindset shift for modern GRC. AI is not static software. It is a living, drifting entity. Your governance cannot stop the moment it goes live. You need to map out the entire lifespan, pre-deployment, deployment, and post-deployment. At every single stage, you must answer 2 things. Who exactly owns this phase, and what exact piece of evidence proves they did their job? You absolutely have to do this, because AI governance simply cannot be reduced to a single approval checkpoint. Think about it. An AI model might be perfectly safe today, but 6 months from now? The data shifts, the model drifts, or maybe a vendor silently pushes an update. Risks evolve long after launch, so your governance has to evolve right alongside it. Now, if this feels overwhelming, the best advice is to start small. Don't try to boil the ocean and rebuild your entire program overnight. Just pick one of these controls. Maybe it's your vendor AI review or your internal AI tool intake. Map how it actually works today in reality, define the workflow, assign an owner, and run a test. Ask yourself, can we prove this specific control worked flawlessly over the last 90 days? Which brings us to our final thought. The question for technology and risk leaders is no longer, do we have a GRC policy? Anyone can write a policy. The real provocative question you need to ask yourself today is this. Can you prove your GRC is actually working? Is your program built on the illusion of paper or the reality of flawless execution? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the exact tools you need to close the execution gap in your own organization.